Hi, my name is Jeremy. This is Red Means Recording, and this is the probably last video in a series of videos going over the Teenage Engineering OP-1 digital synthesizer audio workstation. And this is geared towards people that don't have an OP-1 or are beginner to the OP-1 to just sort of demystify what this thing can do and some of the stuff that I like to do with it. We've gone over a lot in the past videos, and today we're just going to kind of wrap it up by going over some of the utility things and sort of the connectivity of the OP-1 when it comes to loading and taking stuff off. So let's go over to the COM section. I'm going to hit Shift COM, and now we have four modes. Let's start with option. So one of the things that people have complained about the OP-1 sometimes is that when you have a USB cable plugged into here and into like a USB source, either that's a computer or like a USB power source, you'll get some nasty sort of like digital distortion in your signal. And that's absolutely true. So if you're having that issue, you can either unplug the OP-1 from charging, or you can turn off the charging mode in option here so that the OP-1 isn't trying to charge while you're working. OP-1 mode is obviously the OP-1 itself. Control mode is going to ask me to hook it up to a computer, and then I will be able to basically treat this as a MIDI thing with Ableton. I'm not going to show that off. I never use it. You can look it up in a guide if you want. And then obviously there are some options here in terms of what channel knobs and stuff like that will be on. You can see here that I have MIDI channel 1 set for that, and then different modes for each thing. Again, I'm not really going to go into this. It's not something I ever use. There is a Ableton control mode for this though, where this becomes a bit of a controller for Ableton in a very weird way, and you'll have to download a file and put it in your Ableton MIDI map sections to get that to work. But again, I don't really use it, and I don't really think it's a really important feature of the OP-1. I could be wrong. Sorry if you think it is. I'm not going to go over it here. Disk mode is going to mount the OP-1 as a disk drive onto your computer. And when that happens, you're going to have access to the full folder structure of the OP-1 for transferring samples and synthesizer presets and your tape tracks and stuff like that. So I guess let's show that off real quick. I'm going to go back to OP-1 mode so that it doesn't try to connect, and I'm going to hook a cable up to my laptop and we'll show it off real quick. I should have had this set up already, but I'm an idiot. Okay. All right, well, this is the last video, so fuck the aesthetic, I guess. We're going to use the old MacBook here, but this will work on anything, really. So I have the OP-1 plugged in via a USB cable to the Mac, and I'm going to record my screen. So let's hit Shift COM again to move into COM mode and go into disk mode. In a smidgen, this will mount on the desktop of the computer, or it will crash. That's cool. So this is an opportunity to show off a problem. What I'm going to do here, see how I'm touching the power thing here, and it won't actually turn off. If I unplug this, it will turn off. So let's show off factory reset. So I'm going to hold COM while I turn this on. All right, so now I can format the drive, I can factory reset, I can put a new firmware on there, or I can test the functions. It also tells you what version of the firmware you're using. So I'm going to factory reset. And what that's going to do is remove all my user data. What that error was that I saw was something to do with the OP-1 thinking something was supposed to be there that wasn't, and it got super confused when it tried to boot the thing. So this is a scorched earth approach to this particular problem, but it's something that I had to do, and it is what it is. I don't need what I had on the OP-1. Hopefully this doesn't happen to you in such a way where you lose what you need on the OP-1. So let's turn it back on, and then we will plug this back in and mount the thing. First, it's going to recreate the tape tracks and the album tracks, and it will do this if you delete these off of the OP-1 when you have it mounted as well. Factory reset, let's go ahead and plug in our USB cable, Shift COM, disk, and cross our fingers that this mounts properly this time. There it is, baby. No name. All right, let's open it up and take a look at what's going on in here. Album, drum, synth, and tape. Tape are your 4 tape tracks. If you have recorded to them, these are where you would grab to bring into your DAW or back up your tape track. Whenever I finish an OP-1 track, I like to grab this entire folder and like make a folder that says like OP-1 source with the date. Today would be the, I don't know, whatever day it is. Who knows what day it is anymore. And I would drag all this stuff into here. we don't need to actually watch it do that. But that's how I back up all my OP-1 stuff, and that's how I upload the presets to y'all when I put stuff on Patreon. So we talked about what's in tape. Album is going to be your 2 AF files that you recorded from the tape or whatever. We showed that off in the tape video. Drum and synth. There are a series of presets that come for all of the engines in the OP-1 that are baked into the firmware. You can't get rid of them. They're just there. So these user folders are the 8 active presets that you have on your synth and drum when you are working. So if you have saved anything to there, then they will show up here and you can back them up if you want. If you've saved any snapshots, and I showed that off in the synth video, the synth engine video, by holding down any of the 1 through 8 keys, you can save the current state of that into what's called a snapshot. And there will be a snapshot folder here with like a string of numbers. I think it's like a date, and that will show up in here. If you want to add stuff to this, I'll show you how. And I'll also show you a common problem that people have run into with my OP-1 presets. So I'm going to go into a folder that has stuff into it for the OP-1. So here are my presets. So I have drum kits and sampler patches and synth patches. Now in here are all of the OP-1 patches. And some of these, if you preview them, they're just going to say OP-1 patch in a robotic voice. And that's normal because basically they're not a sample, they're a synth engine thing, and your computer doesn't know how to play it back. So if you get an OP-1 patch and you try to preview it and it makes that sound, don't freak out. That's just what it sounds like because it's not an OP-1 that's playing back the patch. So I'm going to take all of these and move them over to the appropriate thing. In the case of my presets or presets that you download from like op1.fun, they will be in the appropriate folder for where they're supposed to go. So drum patches, drum. I have drum kits pitched and drum kits that are just drum kits. So I'm going to drop them into the drum folder. Don't put them in the user folder. Don't put them in a folder. Put them in the root of whatever you want to do. You can put loose presets in here if you want, but I would recommend putting them in a folder. I'm going to do the same thing with the synth patches. Put them into synth. And then I'm going to do the same thing with my sampler patches. This is the synth sampler, so these are going to go into here. I recommend keeping your folder name short because that will allow you to traverse them within the OP-1 interface without them breaking the interface. So once I'm done with putting stuff onto the OP-1 or taking stuff off the OP-1, I can hit the OP-1 button, and it will now start looking at what I just did, what I added. And it's going to start saying created synth patch or created drum patch. And eventually it's going to start sort of like folding in on itself and become very hard to read. I don't know why they haven't fixed this yet, but what we're also going to see is at some point it's going to say failed to create patch. And that doesn't mean that you have messed up or gotten a corrupted patch. Usually what that means is that you have put too many patches onto the OP-1. There's a limit to the number of drum sample patches and synth sampler patches that you can have on here. My pack has too many presets for the OP-1 to fit them all. So you're going to have to pick and choose a little bit. Check out the OP-1 guide online or Google OP-1 synth patch or drum patch limit, and you will get the actual numbers. And just keep in mind that when you do see the failed to create patch note on the OP-1, it does not mean that your OP-1 is broken or the patch is broken. It just means that you've tried to put too much stuff on there. So we're going to let this finish up so I can show you what that looks like. It's worth noting that the most patches that you can get away with are the ones that don't use samples. And now you can see that we're getting failed to create synth patch, and it's going to start being very unhappy down here in the interface, which is unfortunately not very useful to us. But this is what I was talking about. This does not mean that your OP-1's broken. It just means that you have too much stuff on there. So go back and delete some of it. Other thing that is important to note when it comes to overloading the OP-1 with patches is that if you have it completely filled, then you will not be able to save any snapshots. So it's always a good idea to leave a little bit of memory on your OP-1 to be able to save snapshots. Now you can see that I've run out of sampler patch memory. So now it's failing to create the samplers. And I know that because it says RMR, SM. So those are my sampler things. So now it's going to the drum patches and it's going to add as many of those as it can. And I've run into the limit of drum patches. So at some point this is going to stop scrolling, which means that it's finished trying to load all the stuff on. And unfortunately, really hard to see down here that that's happened, but you can press a key and then you'll be able to know that your OP-1 is finished trying to load everything that it can. So if we go into Shift-1, we're going to see all of my synth patches that it was able to load. And you can see how I was talking about keeping your folder names descriptive but short, because any longer and it's gonna go over that line and it's not pretty. My poor aesthetic is just a mess. Can we recover our aesthetic? Just a few tiny little things cleaning up. This is the help button. This is going to give you information about various things. You can see that holding it down and pressing a synth engine will tell you what the synth name is. It will tell you whether or not you're using the envelope in this particular way. It will tell you whether or not you have an effect on, and it will tell you whether or not you are using the LFO and what LFO you're using. It will also let you turn them on and off, which is pretty cool. You can switch right to that page if you want to by pressing it. So if I let go of this, I'll be in the envelope. This also helps with the tape. So this will tell you that you're in tape 1 and 2, tempo, mixer, and you can see EQ, effects, and the output stage. Drum, same thing. Here's all your drum names and the things there. This will tell you what sequencer you're using. It will tell you that you're an album. And yeah, you can just, hit all these with the help button on, and it will tell you a little bit about what's going on. So if you're ever lost, hit the help button. It's useful. Dumb little thing is if you hit shift and help, you get a clock. Help will also show you the battery level. You can see over on the right that little thing is telling me that I'm pretty much full. The OP-1 can last a long time on battery, which is really, really nice considering how much it does. And then finally, if we hit shift, drum, tape, and mixer at the same time, we get a video game. I've actually never played this, but for some reason it's here. Oh god, oh god. And I'm probably going to crash into a building, and we're done. So Choplifter is hidden in there as well. Oh, I'm sorry. Goodbye. Goodbye. Anyways, that's all I have to say about the OP-1. It's a very polarizing device. Obviously, I get along with it. It is expensive, but I hope that after watching these videos, you kind of get a sense as to how much is in here and how many different ways you can use it. I've had this since 2012, and even before my YouTube channel became sort of focused on this thing, it was a really, really good companion for me musically, and I've done a lot of different stuff with it. Does it sound digital? Yeah, definitely. But I think that you'll see, the more time that you spend with it, you'll find that it has a number of ways that it can work for you, whether or not you're making beat-oriented music or making more ambient music. I think it's a really, really cool, one-of-a-kind device, and while it's not for everyone, and while the recording is very weird and the sync issues are really bad, like basically this is terrible to try to sync to anything, even via MIDI, via USB MIDI. I like to use it standalone, and as a standalone device that does what it does, I'm very, very happy with it. So I guess I'll just finish this up by answering that question that everybody seems to have. Is the OP-1 worth it? Is this worth $1,300 new? And I can't answer that question for you. I don't think anybody can. You can look at the workflow and the features and decide for yourself. And for those of you that are thinking about getting an OP-1, I hope that this series of videos has given you a bit of information to make that decision for yourself. If not, I don't care. You can make music with a billion different things. This is just one of them. Thank you for watching all these. I hope that you're doing okay. My name is Jeremy. This is Red Means Recording, and talk to you soon. Bye.